Welcome back, everybody. So a few months ago, Ken sent off his Ancestry DNA kit to uncover the story of his heritage. And here to reveal the story of who Ken really is senior family researcher for Ancestry, Michelle Erkenbrack. Welcome back, Michelle. Who Ken really is. We know who you are, because we don't know. We're going to know a little bit more, though. But, Michelle, truthfully, what can people hope to learn when they take an Ancestry DNA test?
Well, the amazing thing about Ancestry is it's the world leader in fusing family history and genomics. And so anyone that has a desire to know who am I and where did I come from, it puts all of the answers to those questions within reach. And there's something really enriching and personal that comes from that. It doesn't change, I think, how you view about yourself. Right. It just adds to it.
I can only imagine. Now, Ken, why was this so important for you to take this test and find out the results?
Well, I think once you have kids and you start really seeing the sort of generational and when we took it, I was like, you know, my parents are getting older. I want to understand before they pass away. As I said before, unfortunately, my father surprisingly passed away last month. So now it's even more poignant to me to know where I came from so I can teach the kids about where they came from. And that doesn't get lost sort of in the channels of time.
Of course, of course.
Well, you already knew a little bit about your heritage. We've talked about it, but what are you hoping that this test will reveal?
Well, there are certain things that are sort of family lore, like my dad, his grandfather, there's a little bit of we're not quite sure where his grandfather in like small town in Louisiana came from, and he might be from Europe, we're not sure. On my mother's side, there's always talk that we were not from a slave family that came from England, but then there's also some American Indian, but that's all rumor, so you never
really know the truth.
Real.
You don't know.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, take us through what you found out with Ken's ethnicity estimate.
So, Ken, you took the DNA test, and what we did is we compared that to 26 regions across the world. Okay. And we have your DNA.
I can't even breathe right now.
I know, it's a lot.
Can you breathe?
Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, so let's pull these up. So you are 75% African.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay.
Okay, so no surprises there.
Okay.
22% European, and then 3% West Asia, which that's Middle East and Turkey. So 3% Middle Eastern. So you had that in common.
Yeah, I had part Turkish as well, but I'm from Greece, so I'm close. But who knew?
Interesting. And 22% European.
Right.
That surprises me.
So for African Americans, that's actually the average.
Oh, really?
Is to be about 75% African, 25% European. So you are right there in the middle. The surprise to me here was the 15% European Jewish.
Jewish.
15%.
I knew it! I love that.
This is unique. This is something that I've only seen
15%
in Louisiana. So there's something about Louisiana that there's a higher instance of having Jewish heritage when you're black, which I think is really cool.
Interesting, because you would have never, I don't think of those two groups together.
But this is where it becomes even more interesting, the genetic community.
Right.
Tell Ken about his genetic community and what a genetic community is.
Sure. Yeah. So genetic community, what that is it's a deeper look at your DNA. So we look at what you have in common with a group of people and a possible common history. Okay. So your genetic community is Northern and Central Virginia, African Americans from that region. Okay. So if we look, this is a really rich, interesting educational experience that walks you through that history and shows that your DNA matches people that have this in their history. And when the thing that was really exciting to me was to see that you have African Americans from Northern and Central Virginia in your genetic community. But then we built your family tree. We went and researched on Ancestry.com, found some family records about all of your different ancestors, and I actually discovered that on your mom's side, that's from Virginia.
She's from Virginia.
They've been in Virginia for at least 200 years.
Oh, wow.
So 5 generations in Warren County, Virginia specifically.
I know.
That's a long time to be from that area. Yeah. So it's cool when you see the family history and the DNA really align. And I found a couple of neat stories too. So the first is about your grandfather, Joseph Lee Folks. So he, in that 5 generations from Virginia, this is a long history of really blue-collar, hard workers. But in his twilight years, we found a record that showed he worked as a textile worker. So
Fabrics.
I did not
something
know
drew
that.
him later in life. You can see right here,
Look at
where it says occupation, it says textile worker. And so it makes you wonder if your love of
textiles
and things that are tangible, something drew him to that, because
Right.
this is the only instance of that we found in your tree,
Interesting.
which I thought was really cool.
And so what year this was? Early.
This was in.
Oh, that date of death.
Passed away in
Yes.
74.
Right.
Right.
So this is.
So
okay.
this is later in
Interesting.
life.
So that was your mother's side.
Right. My grandmother was a big sewer, so it's interesting that then I had no idea because he died when I was a young child.
Right.
So I knew very little about him.
And then on the other side, on your dad's side, is really fascinating.
Right. So we traced the Wingard line as far back as we could go, which honestly is emancipation. So emancipation happened in 1865.
64, right, 5.
Right. And the first record that happened after emancipation was the 1870 census. So we found your 3rd great-grandparents, Alan and Celia Wingard.
Never even heard those
Right?
names.
That's
Yeah.
So Alan, this is them right here. So this is in Bienville, Louisiana, and we have Alan.
Wingard.
I've heard
and
of Bienville. That's why, because I know that's where my grandmother was born, I believe.
Okay.
Right.
So Alan and Celia Wingard were actually born in South Carolina in 1822.
In South Carolina.
And you go to Hilton Head all the time.
Right.
Yeah. So they had 7 children, and we can tell from their birth dates that they had been together for about 25 years. So this is the first record where they're in a federal document listed by name as emancipated free
After freed
persons.
slaves.
And the really touching part of their story to me is that 2 years after the census was taken in 1872, they were married. So they'd been together for 25 years.
But they weren't able to
Right.
get married until after emancipation.
So they'd been together for 25 years. They built this family. They had 7 children. But it was still important to them to get married.
When they were
And
To be
so,
recognized.
right. So what we wanted to do
That's lovely.
is this is a copy of that record.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
This is the 1870 census. So here is Alan and Celia Wingard right here with 5 of their children, of their 7. And this is to remind you of, this is the first record where they were recognized by name
Humans.
as humans. And then 2 years later, they were married. So we wanted to have you do that.
Thank you.
Isn't that amazing?
I know.
Ken,
Oh, it's just, it's so hard that my father, who tried to find this information out and could only go back so far, because there weren't a lot of records, that he's not here to know where he came from, because it was very important to him. But at least my children will know, and so they can tell their children.
that's what I wanted to ask you, Ken. I mean, this is a very emotional moment, but what do you think how do you think this information will affect you, your family, your children moving forward?
Well, I want to go to Bienville now because and South Carolina, I never knew, and that's, I grew up in Georgia just over the border, and I no real affinity to that. So now I want to take Mom, and the grandkids, her grandkids, and do a little exploring sort of in honor of my dad.
And not only that, the small town in Virginia that your family has been
For
for 200
200
years.
years.
I mean, would you want to go back and maybe buy land there?
But what's interesting is at the end of the month, my father's body is actually being buried at Arlington Cemetery in Virginia, and we're actually planning on going back to where Mom was raised, which is about 45 minutes out. So having this information in September when we go back to bury my dad will be huge for my mom, and it will give her a lot of comfort, I think.
Yes.
So,
Oh, and I hope this
thank
gave
you.
you comfort too, Ken. This was
did.
such a beautiful story. And
Absolutely
thank you for being
wonderful.
brave enough to let us share it with the world.
I totally forgot.
Thank you. And if seeing Ken's results has inspired you all to find more out about yourselves, this Thursday through Labor Day, Ancestry is giving free access to occupation records so you can unlock your past to inspire your future at Ancestry.com.
That's right. And next, cookbook author Nancy McDermott cooks pork chops.